Hi guys, welcome to Etta Arlene Spiritcast. If you're new to this podcast, we talk about all things related to mindfulness, magic, astrology, tarot, Reiki, meditation, anything in that realm. In today's episode, we have an awesome guest. Her name is Hannah and her website is ownyourpowers.com. Hannah is a wealth of knowledge on a lot of different topics. Some of the stuff she does is tarot, spirit guides. She helps people connect to their spirit guides. In particular, dragon guides, which we do talk about in this podcast. We were really excited to have somebody on who was very knowledgeable of that realm. So super exciting. She also helps people connect to the divine in all forms. And she helps people like step into their power, which is really amazing. And the interview was so much fun. If you can't tell, it is just me on this intro, but the interview, Arlene, is with us. So that being said, I am going to keep it short. So I'm going to tell you guys where you can find us at. We are on Twitter at @pro_PGH, Facebook, which we're like kind of on, not really, but if you want to check it out, it's at Arlene PGH, Instagram at Etta Arlene, and we are on TikTok at Etta Arlene. I'm actually kind of excited about the TikTok because we weren't sure what we were going to like really do with it. We just made an account. In the past, we were posting pages from our Oracle book, which will be linked down below. But we've started posting Reiki. So if you would like free Reiki, you're welcome to follow us on TikTok as well as on YouTube. We post free Reiki like every day. You can sign up for a mailing list if you want a free Reiki session. Or if you just want to like support us, get Reiki, you could buy a session on our website. And we're on Patreon, so if you want to look up that, you're welcome to. Speaking of social media, we also are going to start posting this podcast on YouTube because we know a lot of people like to listen to podcasts on YouTube. That is brand new. We're just uploading some of the old episodes, and that's at Arlene Spiritcast, which will be linked down below. Now, before we get into the episode, I figured I would pull an oracle card for everybody. It doesn't matter when you are listening to this. If it resonates, it resonates. I am using an angel deck because I love it. And the card that I pulled, because I already pulled it, the card is all about releasing feelings of heaviness. And this includes any anger, guilt, blame, anything that is skewing your perception of the world. So whenever we feel these like more dense energies, first off, it's okay. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel regret, anger, shame, all of that. We're here on this earth to feel a range of emotions. And you don't want to suppress those feelings. You want to feel them, work through them, but you don't want to stay in that place. And oftentimes we can even feel guilty about feeling sad or about feeling angry. What we'll end up doing is we will suppress shadow work. We'll suppress a lot of like various things that are part of healing. And it'll be hard for us to like move forward. We'll keep repeating these cycles. It's like so drilled in our head that like if we feel like crap, we're not going to have a good life. We're not going to, be able to, if you subscribe to the idea of us shifting dimensions and stuff, like if you're sad, you're not going to be able to go to the higher dimensions. Let's alleviate that. And first off, start with it's okay to be sad sometimes. And it's okay to be upset and angry and furious and frustrated and all of those emotions. We're here to have the human experience. It's precious. It's a part of being alive. But it's not something that should be permanent, and it's not something you have to do alone. And this oracle card is saying that you can release these heavy feelings to the divine to help you shift your perspective of your reality. And sometimes we get so like blinded by these feelings that can really like pull at us that it can make us overlook all of the other beautiful things that are a part of being alive, that are joyous and happy and fun and exciting. And it just kind of like is like just there and attached. So this card is reminding you that you can just release it. Lighten the load. Let the guides, let the divine lighten that load for you. And you can call them in and ask them for help. And so what they're saying is they're here to reassure you that the situation and people involved that you've been harboring these feelings towards, that they can be released, is what I should say. That you don't have to let that situation or that person take space in your field anymore. That you are safe to release them. You're safe to forgive. Now, speaking of forgiveness, one of the things that I personally practice and suggest other people do if they have a hard time letting go of things is the act of forgiveness. And so Marianne Williamson talks about a lot about that in her book. She actually has a book, gosh, I forget the title. It's not Return to Love. It's a different one of her books that I was divinely guided to read. Sometimes if a book shows up and it just resonates, it's like that with everything. You might have something that like shows up and it resonates. Like, don't overlook that stuff like that. Sometimes the divine speaks to us very subtly. So if you have something on your mind and then all of a sudden you're listening to the radio and it sounds like they're talking about that and they're answering that question, that's the divine speaking. I was going through a hard time and having a difficult, like, why is this happening to me? That type of thing. Like, why are these people doing this? And this book by Marianne Williamson just shows up. I read it. It was all about forgiveness. And I forgave all parties. And then everything worked out. My life felt like it was in flow again because I was able to release that dense energy that I was harboring. It doesn't mean I didn't feel it, that I ignored those feelings. I released it. And so the act of you can forgive yourself for not making as much money as you want. That's guilt that might be in that subconscious area. You can forgive somebody for hurting your feelings. You can forgive even if you really don't want to. It doesn't mean that you're truly to the core forgiving it, but what you're doing is you're freeing up that space in your heart and your mind. Like, you're getting that thing, that attachment, that whatever it is that's been kind of blocking you, you're like giving it permission to leave. It's no longer there. You're deleting it through the act of forgiveness. And sometimes you have to forgive yourself too. Like, it's okay. So this is Oracle card is kind of reminding you that these emotions, like especially guilt, can still attract in negative things if we don't break the loops and the cycles. We can just get locked in that pattern. And this is asking you to kind of shift your perspective on certain situations, certain people, and through forgiveness, see that find that like, I don't know, godliness might be the word. Find that like innocence, divinity, whatever within, and use that as a tool to release. But also, it's a reminder that you can ask your angels to help you. And it's saying that you can also forgive yourself, release regrets. There may have been an argument that was based on a misunderstanding. And some of you might have to start inner child work, recognize inner child within, and go even further into the past. This card's asking you to look past surface illusions, and it's asking you to see underlying spiritual truths of perfection and divine order. So what that means, I'm sorry, I said this intro was going to be short, and here we are. But what this is expressing is that sometimes we need to look past the surface. And now if we're talking about people, we need to look into hearts. Not everybody's born bad. Not everybody's out to get you. People make mistakes. There's misunderstandings, different viewpoints. Everyone's seeing the world differently. So, look through their eyes a little bit to help you move on. And then the other thing is, if it's like a situation, you're being asked to look, what is the underlying spiritual truth? So sometimes we have things happen that are supposed to show us something that moves us into a better space. And with that comes like divine timing and divine order. So had A not happen, B wouldn't ever happen, which ends up being what makes you the happiest. So I know that was like kind of all over the place, but that's what I'm getting from this card. So if I sum it up, you're being asked to release and forgive because you may be harboring feelings of fear, worry, doubt, anger, guilt, shame. And you've been holding them for too long. Now, I know I said it's okay to feel these things, and it is, but you have to do the work, and you have to figure out where it's coming from to break cycles. And use tools like forgiveness, like seeing through the illusion, shifts of perspective, and your spirit team to help you work through all of that energy. Hope that helped you guys. We have an ad next, and then we're going to get into the interview with Hannah.
Okay, guys, this is an ad. We believe in supporting small business, and today we're talking about the small business called Garage Cats.
They make 100% organic, handmade lip balm using hemp and cocoa butter. It smells amazing. It lasts for a very long time. They use eco-friendly paper tubes. They're pretty much awesome. If you are interested in supporting this business, you can find the link below or go to garagecats.etsy.com. We just want to take a quick moment to invite everyone listening to check out our shop at ettarlene.com. If you like what we do, it is one of the easiest ways to support us. Plus, you will get our awesome handcrafted 100% vegan soy candles, our prints, books, oracle cards, and book a Reiki session. All of this can be found at ettarlene.com and linked in the show notes. All right, guys, we're back with Hannah, and her website is ownyourpowers.com, and we'll have all of her info linked down below. So we're super excited to have her on. We've actually really love all of her content. Like, we've been following her for a while now, and now we're actually able to chat with her. So, yeah, do you have anything you want to add in, Arlene, before we get into that?
I just really want to hear your story. I want to hear how you got started and how all this found you. If we can even say that, like how did this all begin?
Yeah, we can definitely get into it. So I guess essentially at the heart of what I do, it's I'm just a channeler, I guess, and I channel different sources. And like the main theme of my work is to empower people to empower themselves. And so I ultimately do a lot of coaching, like spiritual development coaching, twin flame coaching, and I connect in with people's spirit guides, specifically dragon guides, and I draw sketches of them and do channeled messages, and I do tarot, and I talk to animals, and so it's really magical and really witchy. But yeah, it definitely wasn't always that way. In fact, it's only a recent development. So I felt called to totally share my story today, and I got bullet points here to keep me focused. But essentially, I would say it all started for me at age 8. So up until that time, I was pretty magical, and I had a lot of spiritual experiences, and I didn't question it and stuff like that. But age 8, I had like a lot of traumas happen to me all at once that really shook me up. So I had 2 great grandmas die, a friend, and my cat, all within 2 weeks of each other. And I was like accepting of my grandmas, but the friend and the cat made me really existential, because I grew up in like the like Catholic school system and very like hardcore Bible beater Christian environment. And I was brainwashed to believe that animals didn't have souls and therefore didn't go to heaven and pass on. So the cat like really messed me up. And then the friend being the same age as me also really messed me up. And on top of that, my best friend quote unquote betrayed me, pulling some like third grade mean girl shit, and it essentially left me completely friendless. And then my family started having money problems. There were lots of arguments, and they cut out things like cable that allowed me actually to connect with other kids and make friends. And my parents also got abusive. And I remember one instance I was like hiding in my closet from my dad, and I just saw this like enraged look in his eyes. I swore to God he was going to kill me if he found me. And I was just like praying to God and my guides without realizing even what spirit guides were. But I guess the icing on the shit cake of all of that was that I stopped believing in magic. I stopped believing that the unseen could be actually real. And it came down actually to Santa Claus. So I was always into Santa Claus and any sort of like fantastical imaginary thing. And I always like made these like boxes that I would like leave with the cookies that you leave out for Santa, like decorate these little boxes, and I gave it as a gift to Santa. And like after all of this crazy trauma and shit had happened, I remember being at my dad's work and I found like the boxes that I made like at his work, and I was just like, fuck. I was kind of like suspecting that Santa didn't exist up until that point, but that was just like the final like bitch slap. I was like, okay, so magic isn't real. This world officially sucks. And I don't really want to be a part of this world. So needless to say, I was devastated and traumatized as fuck by all this stuff. And being the Christian, I turned to the only thing that I could, which was I prayed. I prayed about it. My parents taught me to pray every night before I go to bed. So I remember just being this kid, just so desperate, like crying my eyes out and like praying to God. I was like, this is so hard. I can't get through any of this. Like, if I just had a single friend, I think I could get through it. But I'm completely alone. Like, school's not safe. Home's not safe. I don't feel like I belong in this world. Please just grant me a friend to get me through this, God. So that night, I had a vivid dream. And for all you 90s kids out there, Pokemon came to me. And this was the Pokemon Zapdos. And for those of you unfamiliar with Pokemon, it looks like Big Bird, but punk rock. It's like Big Bird, but spikier. So like punk rock Big Bird came to me in this dream and started talking to me. And it was really weird because I hadn't progressed in the Pokemon video games or like the show or anything like where I even saw this Pokemon and like how it interacted. I never even decided that I liked it. It was just so random to me. And then it started talking to me, and it had like this male voice. It kind of sounded like how I would imagine like a bird would kind of talk. It was really throaty, I guess, high-pitched, kind of scratchy. And he said that he could be my friend and he would help me through all of this trauma if I would allow him to. And so I was like, hell yeah. Like, I got nothing to lose. I'm totally sold. So within 6 months of all of that, I actually ended up having one of the best year and a half of my life. Like, my whole life up until that point, my goal was to get a pet dog. And we finally got that pet dog. And I also ended up making a new best friend. And ironically, we started connecting over like Pokemon. And really indulging in Pokemon allowed me to connect with the other kids. This was like the 90s when it was like a massive fad and like everyone loved it. And that allowed me to connect and just have a really good time. And I just like could see this spirit guide, kind of like an imaginary friend. I could like feel his presence like when I wasn't sleeping. And I would have like visions and daydreams of him and hear him like talking to me in my ears sometimes and stuff. And I just thought I was freaking crazy, to be honest, because I had given up on magic at that point, right? So I thought I was totally crazy, this traumatized kid that was just making up an imaginary friend to get me through this. And I was like, okay, whatever. It's working, so gonna just keep rolling with it. So flash forward now to 13-year-old Hannah. and my life is absolute shit again. And this was when I had my very first dark night of the soul. So things had declined again from, I would say, around age 11 or so. And I was having like a massive existential crisis from like the day I turned 13 years old. It just really triggered something huge in me. And one of my favorite movies was always The Lion King. And I had just rewatched it, and it actually kind of contributed and triggered the depression, because The Lion King is all about the circle of life. And I started thinking about that, the circle of life, and how like at the end of the movie, like Simba has like a baby and the cycle is like said to continue and stuff. And I'm like, what's the fucking point of that? Like, what's the point of living when you're just going to do the same thing over and over and over again? And I started like looking around and seeing society, and I was like, there's something seriously wrong here. I was like, literally, we like go to school, and then we graduate, we get a job, we get married, we have kids, and then we just retire and then die. I was like, this is what I'm seeing, and I don't like it. I was like, I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to live a long time. Like, people in my family live a long time. We have longevity. I was like, I don't want to be a part of that. Like, yeah, like,
I'm sorry.
Longevity in this
Your
case.
story's really hitting my heart right now. And then
You're like, I don't want to live like that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I keep it. Yeah, like I like to keep it light. Like when we go in the dark stories. Yeah, so I have fun with it. So yeah, I was like, yeah, fuck longevity. I'm gonna end it. I was like, what's the point? I'm gonna end it. So one day when my family was out, ironically taking my little brother to therapy, which is really ironic to me because like I never went to therapy as a kid, and I probably could have really used it. But they were taking my little brother to therapy, I believe, and I decided that that was going to be my move. I was going to go for it. I was going to go home, as we say, starseeds. So I didn't care if I went to hell, because again, growing up in that Christian tradition, that's what we're taught to believe, that we go to hell. If you kill yourself, you go to hell. It's not good. And I was like, you know what? Hell's better than this. Honestly, hell is better than this, like society's rat wheel, as I call it. I was like, I really, really can't do it. I don't see a point. And then just to like repeat this cycle over and over, I can't do it. So I got a knife. And, I had to be dramatic about it because I'm a Leo. So I had a knife, and I was like looking in the knife, kind of just being really mindful with it before I did anything. And I just kind of saw like my distorted reflection, like looking back at me from this knife. And it was so distorted, it literally like sparked a different perspective in my mind. I was like, oh, you like look at this. It's different than when I look in the mirror. It's different when I look at myself in the pond. It's like different. And my revelation that I had in the moment, I was like, wow, if a 13-year-old kid like me had the power to take my own life, don't I also have the power to live it on my terms? And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna put the knife down, and I'm gonna give that a try. I'm gonna experiment with this and see if this has any credence. So from there, I proceeded to have another one of the best year and a half of my life, despite being totally friendless again and having had nothing in my external reality shift. It was just a mindset shift. It was an internal shift, and I felt it. Like, I was like, this is awesome. I feel really powerful, even though nothing's changing. It's so weird. I was like, clearly, I really went off the deep end. I'm totally insane now. But if I'm having a good time, what does it even matter? So flash forward now to 2014, and I'm now 23, so like 10 years after this. And this is my second dark night of the soul, an official spiritual awakening. So I realized that I had been playing on the rat wheel that I agreed I wouldn't play on. I had gone to school, I went to college and got my degree and all that stuff. And then afterwards, actually, what happened is I had to have this foot surgery, and it had me totally immobile for like months and totally reliant on like my family, like, which is really big for me because I'm very independent and I did not like it, but it forced me to be still essentially with my demons and with with this idea. Because I was on the rat wheel and I didn't realize it. I had gotten on it. But being forced to slow down made me realize, like, oh shit, like, what have I been doing the past 10 years? I've become that which I didn't want to become. And I honestly have no idea what I want to do. I'm graduated now. Everyone's like, oh, what are you going to do? You're going to get a job with your major. My major was in Japanese, by the way. And I was like, not really. I was like, that doesn't sound fun to me. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. And sometimes I would tell people, I was like, yeah, maybe I'll get a job at a translation, like in translation or something, just to make them shut up, because people would always give me shit when I was like, no, it doesn't sound fun. Like, there's got to be something else. So when I was like in my funk there, like on my parents' couch, I'm sitting there, I'm like, am I just having delusions of grandeur, like believing there's more to life? Like, am I insane actually? Like, am I really actually insane? I was starting to be really convinced of it. And I was like Googling like delusions of grandeur, as you do, and like the signs and stuff. And I'm like, I'm not going to go the suicide route again. I already decided that that's not the path for me. So I'm like, if I can prove to myself that I actually am delusional, that I need mental help, I'll take my happy pills and get back to society's rat wheel like a good little girl. So naturally, you turn to Dr. Google, and synchronistically enough, instead of finding the proof that I was looking for, I found a law of attraction blog. That was the first thing I stumbled upon. It was like this article about like, are we delusional, like using the law of attraction or something like that. And I'd never heard of the law of attraction before, and I was totally hooked on the concept and the idea. And by the end of the post, everything in my life that hadn't made sense up until that point, it suddenly did. It suddenly clicked. And I found myself just switching from using God to using like the universe, instead of saying, yeah, like God wants this and stuff. And it just felt so empowering. Like, I really did just have that moment. It would be like that moment in the movie where you hear all these voices and you see all these flashes, this imagery, and then all of a sudden it's like, click. It just clicks. Everything makes sense. So I had officially fallen down the rabbit hole. That was the beginning. And this time, just like the other two times, my life also was amazing. It was amazing for like 6 months. Again, though, nothing external had changed, and I was still recovering from this. I still had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I was recovering from this foot surgery. But the thing that was different this time was that, as opposed to like a year and a half, 2 years or so, the good stuff only lasted for about 6 months. 6 months before everything just went to hell. As you know, I'm sure anyone out there, you guys know, and anyone listening knows, how it goes with your spiritual awakening, like where you just get bitch slapped repeatedly by the universe.
Yeah. Yes. That tower falls hard.
Yeah, exactly. It's like all the tower moments, right?
Yeah.
So
waves.
Waves, yeah.
Yes. So I call it like my telenovela life. Basically ever since then, my life has been like a telenovela, like levels of dramatic, like just absolutely ridiculous. And it was like 8 years ago, and my life still hasn't really calmed down, to be honest. But luckily, over the past 8 years, that's when I started recognizing my abilities and developing coping skills. So this is where we get into how I got into the channeling and stuff. My first instance where I started to think like, oh, maybe I'm psychic. Maybe there's something bigger than me going on here and I'm not insane. I had this dream of my best friend's dad. And first off, it was just even weird that I had a dream and that I remembered it, because ever since like I was 8 and had all that trauma and had that initial dream with the Pokemon, I don't really remember my dreams. Like I'm not much of a dreamer. I don't remember dreams, but I remember this one clear as day. And I like in the dream, my friend, I like saw this text from my friend that she's like, my dad died in a plane crash. And then I saw like this image of like this still image, like in a newspaper or something, of like this nasty plane crash. and just all these other events and stuff of it like happening and stuff, and I could feel it. It was so vivid. And I then like talked to my best friend after that, and I didn't want to freak her out, so I didn't really come out and say what had happened. I was just kind of poking around like, oh, is your dad okay? Like, what's going on with that? And everything was fine. So I was like, cool. It's just a dream. It was just a dream. I don't know why I would dream about my best friend's dad. That's really random, but okay, it was a dream. Not so. Within 2 months of that dream, that all happened. It all happened just as I had dreamt it. I woke up one day to this text from my friend saying that her dad died in a plane crash. Oh. And then, yeah, it was really intense. My mom actually like had heard about it too and stuff, and she sent me this link to this newspaper article with the exact still of like the plane crash that I had seen in my dream.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was so freaky. And I was just like a mess because so many different things. Like I obviously felt so much empathy for my friend, and I knew her dad and was like, oh my God, he's dead now. And I was feeling like guilty that I hadn't said anything. I was like, oh, could I have prevented it? And I was also feeling massively geeked out because I'm like, I had a dream about this. How could this have happened when I had a dream about it? Like, this is insane. So I was just like a complete and utter mess. And I like talked to the universe at this point. I still wasn't really connecting. I guess I wasn't really connecting with guides at that point. But I was like, yeah, I don't want this. Universe, I was like, I don't want this. What's the point of this ability? I was like, because I had this strong sense that even though I saw that, like, even if I had told my friend, that it wouldn't have changed anything. Like, there was just this strong, clear cognizance, like, clear knowing that it was just like a set in stone thing, and there was nothing I could have done. So I was like, why would you show me that when I couldn't do anything about it? It doesn't make any sense. So then that day, like this was all on the same day. And later that day, my best friend's dad came to me. That's where it gets really crazy. Like he came to me, and it was similar to the Pokemon, similar to Zapdos when I was a kid. Like I couldn't see him very clearly, but I could kind of see him, like, and I could feel his presence around me, and I could kind of hear him, and it was so weird. Like it was the clearest channel I had ever experienced up until that point. And I was like, why are you coming to me? Like, go to your daughter. Like, go to someone else in your family. Like, why me? I'm just your daughter's best friend. And he's like, well, you're the clearest channel. You're the only one I could get a hold of. You're the clearest channel out of everyone that I'm aware of. And you are, like, the closest person to my daughter. So he's like, yeah, I'm coming to you. And I was like, okay, fine. And basically, he just had stuff he wanted me to convey to her. And I was like, okay, bro, I'll do it. I'll convey it. I don't know if she's going to believe me because this sounds batshit. But I did it, and it did. She did say, like, there was some contention. I got honest with her, and I was like, yeah, so to be honest, I had this dream about this happening a couple months ago. But I feel like it wouldn't have changed anything. And what I got and channeled and came through was that we kind of had to, like, prepare the way, like, and then tell her that, so that she knew there wasn't anything that could be done, that this was like no one's fault and stuff. Because, you know, when people die, everyone starts blaming like themselves or doctors or stuff like that in circumstances. And kind of like what came through is that I had this vision and stuff to prove that it was just always going to happen. Like it was no one's fault. And like her dad, like it was his own plane. Like he had his own plane. He was a pilot. He loved planes. He loved flying. And what he told me is he wanted, like, that was the way for him to go out. He wouldn't have had it any other way. And he wasn't alone. He was with his girlfriend that he had a really good relationship with. So he's like, yeah, that's the best way to go out, you know, with someone you love, flying in the sky. So that was like an intense experience, and it really shook me up. And I never really like let go. I was like, I'm psychic. Like I've always had weird experiences, but nothing can explain that. So my second validation actually came from this guy that is called Steve the Psychic, is what I'll call him. I just think it's hilarious that there's a psychic named Steve. Just Steve the Psychic. He's just Steve the Psychic. So this time it was 2018, and I was back from Japan. I lived and worked in Japan for a few years and stuff. And again, things like didn't go well, and I kind of was crashed. I was living with my depressed mom and my heroin addict brother, which is a whole nother rabbit hole. But yeah, it was really, really bad, really bad. If anyone knows like what it's like to live with an addict, particularly a heroin addict, like they bring everyone into their shit, and it's bad. So at one point, I was convinced, I was honest to God convinced that my brother was possessed by a demon, because he would like lock himself away, shooting up or whatever, and he would make these weird sounds. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure this isn't just like an addict thing or a heroin addict thing. I was like, this is weird. This is like The Exorcist meets like the velociraptors from Jurassic Park sounds. Like it was bizarre. Like, I'm like, what is going on? I'm really freaked out. And I was just picking up on like these really, really dark vibes. Like, and I couldn't conceptualize it at that point because I wasn't aware of spirit. But I was just like, this is dark, like something's going on. I need help. And I remembered that my best friend, whose dad had passed, had a meeting with this psychic shortly after her dad passed. And he validated, you know, that her dad had passed on, and like transmitted some messages from her dad and stuff like that. And she had a good reading with this psychic. I had never had a reading with a psychic before. And honestly, like given all my Christian upbringing and stuff like that, I was scared as hell. But I was like, desperate times call for desperate measures. So I'm going to give Steve the Psychic a call. And so when we had this call, Steve was like, yeah, like, let me check into this. And it was just the weirdest thing to me that this guy, like, it was just a phone call, just like we're on right now. He couldn't see me. He'd never met me, like nothing like that. And he was just like feeling into the energy is like what he said. And he's like, let me just look into this. And he was like, okay. So he's like, good news. Like your brother isn't possessed by a demon. It's like, yay. He's like, but you and your mom and your brother all have like a bunch of entities. He's like, you have like 2 entities. Your mom has 3. Your brother has 6. And he's like, one of the entities that your brother has is about to become a demon. So apparently that's yeah, it's insane, right? I was like, this is like
what, Steve? Are you serious?
Steve, like, are you pulling my leg here? Are you just trying to get my money, Steve? Like, come on.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So he was like, yeah, it's that's what's happening here. And I was like, okay, like, tell me more, Steve, help me out, throw a girl a bone here. And he's like, yeah, no worries, I can take care of it. He's like, he's like, for you seem like you have the will, like, to get out of this like pit mentality and stuff and clear yourself up. He's like, for your mom and your brother, probably it's just going to come back. And he's like, if your brother keeps doing drugs, the entities are just going to come back. But he's like, for now, at least I can just clear the entities from them and from you and stuff like that. And also another thing that's crazy I just remembered is like, he was like, oh, and you guys live on top of a portal. And he's like, there's lots of spirit activity where you guys live. And I was like, oh my God, I knew I got bad vibes from this house because I had never lived in that house before. My mom and brother had moved in like while I was in Japan, and from day one, I just got bad vibes from the place. And I was like, oh my God, this is insane. Like, I feel like I'm in a movie right now.
Oh my gosh.
It's like Poltergeist or something.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit, help me out, Steve. So he did, and he called in like Archangel Michael. He's like, don't worry, I'm just gonna like call in Archangel Michael, and we're just gonna send all these things to the light, and we're gonna close up the portal. So he did some weird like psychic shit where he was just like telling them to go to the light, and he had an argument actually with like, it was straight up like a movie. He had an argument with the one entity on my brother that was gonna turn into a demon. It was really resistant. All the other ones went away, no problem. Apparently, allegedly.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So, but it did go away eventually. He's like, yeah, they always go to the light eventually. And so he fixed it, and I was like inspired to book a personal reading. And also just going off of that, over the next like few days and stuff, I felt totally different. Like I had felt like bipolar, like hardcore bipolar up until that point. I had like massive mood swings, and I was totally good after that. So I was like, clearly he did something and it wasn't just bullshit. And I was inspired to book a personal reading with him now that we had gotten all that serious urgent shit out of the way. So I want to just make note of this. Like, I was on food stamps. I was unable to work at that time. Like, I had no car. I was in this terrible situation. But I got the money together to get a reading. And I think that's important because I have a lot of people that say to me, oh, I can't like afford a reading right now and stuff like that. And honestly, in my experience, if you set the intention with the universe, you're like, if this isn't my highest good to receive this reading, send me the money I need. The universe will support you. And that's what happened for me with this situation. I got the money and I gladly sent it to him. I was like, please enlighten me, Steve. I want to do what you're doing. Like, this sounds really cool. Tell me more. I don't want to bore you with all the details of the reading, but it was amazing. It was insightful. It was powerful. It geeked me out. It was so on point. And what's relevant, I guess, to this journey and me awakening is that I asked him, I was like, Steve, am I psychic? I just point blank. I was like, Steve, am I psychic? I was like, I'm kind of feeling like I'm psychic. And it's freaking me out. And he was like, of course. Like, he like kind of laughed. He's like, yeah, of course you are, Hannah. He's like, honestly, everyone is like psychic. Everyone has the ability to tap into that. He's like, but yeah, I can feel that you're like a little more maybe open to it. And at the time, I was focusing full time on writing my fantasy novels. Like, that's what pulled me through all this dark stuff and not even being able to work and stuff. And he is the one that told me the thing that I'm always saying to my audience. This is where it came in. So he's like, yeah, so you're writing all these fantasy novels, right? He's like, well, creativity and psychic ability, they're the same thing. So he's like, actually, you're channeling when you write your like fantasy novels. And he's like, you're actually strengthening your psychic ability by doing that and engaging in creativity every day like you're doing. And I was like, oh my God, like mind blown. I never would have imagined that was a thing. But I was like, I think he's right. Like, there seems to be something there. So I started to wonder, I was like, could my characters that I'm writing, like in these novels, could they actually be quote unquote real? So now, like, where we're going to wrap this story up is flash forward to the end of 2020. And we all know how 2020 went.
Oh, yeah.
Need I say more? For me personally, at this point, I was now a farm slave, as I like to call it. I worked on a farm under abusive conditions, like making like no money. And I was in Australia here, like in the ass end of nowhere, Australia, feeling more out of alignment than ever before. I was like, this is time. Like, my whole life, I'd always felt that when I was around 30 years old, it would be time to like step up and like initiate my mission, my starseed mission or whatever, and like get out there and be loud and like inspire people. And yet here I was, a farm slave in the ass end of nowhere, Australia. I'm like, what gives, universe? Because, yeah, FYI, I turned 30 in 2020, like right before this moment. So I was working with a therapist at this point too. For the first time in my life, I started working with a therapist. I was like, I need help. I got serious issues. It's like I got mad PTSD and dissociation problems. And so I worked with a therapist, and he confirmed that I have dissociation, that's just something I default to. And we were like figuring out how to like move through that and process that. Well, in any case, synchronicity led me to another psychic reader, this one, Fiona, the Akashic record reader, for a soul blueprint realignment session, as they're called, I believe. And side note, it was super powerful and life-changing, and I'm actually doing a live with that woman in a couple of days. So, like, what are the odds? It's like,
that's
really
so awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's crazy. It comes like full circle. So in the session, she goes into your Akashic records, and she goes to like 3 traumas, like in your past lives, in your past somewhere, that are causing blockages to your alignment with your like life's purpose and stuff like that. So she found these 3 traumas. The first one related actually to my twin flame, which is a story for another time.
Oh dear.
That's another rabbit hole.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The second one was this past life, and she was only able really to tell me, she was like, it was kind of medieval times. It was 11 lifetimes ago. But I actually went in having gotten more confident in my own psychic abilities after that point. I went in, connected with this life, and discovered that this chick was named Meredith, and she lived in Wales. So Meredith of Wales, I was Meredith of Wales 11 lifetimes ago. And basically Meredith of Wales made this choice from a young age. She had a choice. She was very psychic and very witchy and just had a natural ability for it. She had gifts, and everyone in like the town knew it and stuff. And she had a choice. Like, she could be quiet about her gifts and forsake her gifts and choose her family and like have a family and stay safe with her family. Or she could be a pariah, like accept her gifts and be a pariah and be kicked out. And she chose to be quiet and to forsake her gifts. And when I checked in with her personally, I learned that she ultimately killed herself. Not right after that, but she killed herself because it killed her slowly to just not accept her gifts, to repress that and to be quiet, to not stay true to herself. And that, like, on a side note, I guess that ties in with the whole suicide concept as well. Like, what she told me about suicide and stuff is like, yeah, like, of course you have free will. You can kill yourself and stuff. You're not going to hell or anything like that, but it will fuck you up for a while. And what this did was it caused this mad block in me for many lives, because that was 11 lifetimes ago, in what's called the God spark. And so we all have at least one God spark that connects us to source energy. And Fiona told me that I actually have 2. I have another one, I believe, in my third eye, and that it would allow me to reach a lot of people and have a big audience. But that was blocked, and it was blocked because this woman chose to forsake her gifts and chose to like kill herself and just like give up on everything. So I made peace with her and like forgave her, and like we worked through it and stuff, and we're tight now. So that, like, supposedly, allegedly, we cleared that shit, and it was awesome. So then number 3 was where it gets even geekier, in my opinion. So Fiona picked up on trauma from this life. She picked up on the trauma from age 8. Like, she never met me before. It had no idea. I never talked about that, never said anything. She picked up on the trauma from age 8, and she was like, yeah. She's like, yeah, so I just get the sense, like, it was really tough for you. It was really traumatic. And as a result, you, like, picked up these negative thought forms, like collective negative thought forms of like lack and stuff like this. And it was very disempowering. And she's like, and so as a result, she's like, you employed a spirit guide to teach you dissociation. And I was like, whoa, what? I was like, wait a second. Like, I didn't say this to her, but I was thinking, I was like, so Zapdos, the Pokemon, was actually my spirit guide. It actually existed and was my spirit guide. And not only that, but it was my spirit guide to teach me dissociation. Like, that's so dark.
My God.
Yeah, I was like, damn. But I was like, but I can see it. And it's like, Zapdos is like a bird. So it made so much sense. Like, it's dissociation, like flying away, getting out of your body. So that, honestly, for me, I was just like, that did it for me. That clicked. I was like, wow, this is real. I channel, and like spirit guides take any form. They can even be fictional characters. And after the session, like, Fiona helped me clear all these blockages, allegedly again. And I was like, within the week following, I was still just geeking out about the whole Zapdos spirit guide thing. And I was in this cafe by myself in the ass end of nowhere, Australia, which is rare given that I was a farm slave. I was rarely able to get off the farm. So it was rare that I would even be somewhere where I could hear like just random music. And so I'm sitting in this cafe, like munching on my hamburger, just chilling, enjoying life. And then the song Break Away by Kelly Clarkson comes on. And now, why does this matter? Why is this geeky? Because Break Away by Kelly Clarkson was, as I realize now, it was my anchor to call in this spirit guide, Zapdos. I would listen to that as a kid, and that would like summon him, that would call him in, and it came on. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, this song's old. Like, what are the odds it would even be playing on? And like in that moment too, like he came to me. I hadn't connected with this guide in like 15 years or something, and he like came to me like in a vision and stuff like that. And so at this point I'm like sobbing. I'm like by myself in this cafe with my like half-eaten like hamburger, just sobbing my eyes out. And he's like, okay, I think it's time. Would you like to be free? Like, do you want to like break this contract now? Do you want to like stop dissociating and learn to integrate here on Earth? And I was like, yeah, I guess. Like,
and the song too, that really adds to it.
I know.
So geeky, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was just like, yeah, okay. And so that was it. Like that officially initiated my path. And within a couple of weeks, I had moved out of the farm slave environment. I was back in Sydney where it just feels good and supportive to me. My best friend, again, the one whose dad had passed, got the hit that I should start posting on TikTok. And I followed that hit. And within 2 weeks, I had my first viral video. The rest is history. I've since gotten like 200,000 followers on TikTok in a year and really increased my reach through YouTube and my mailing list as well. So I'm like, yeah, shit definitely shifted, and it just continually geeks me out. So the rest is history in the making, as I like to say.
Wow.
Yeah.
It shows you how quickly things can change.
Mm-hmm.
Like that only 1 year you got, that's wild.
I know.
That shows you when it's go time, it's go.
Yeah.
Like as soon as he released that block, it was it. Wow. That's wow. I'm just mine.
Right? I've thought like I should share it with people because just to demonstrate like the power of like energetic blockage, right?
Yeah, and that the fact that we can carry that on from multiple lifetimes just from one action. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My mind's just it's open another avenue of research.
I try. That's what I do, guys.
Oh my gosh. It's funny, the lifetime things. I have some things that I know I've been working on for many lifetimes. And I keep hoping like this is the one.
You can decide that. Like that's what I've learned because I'm all about again just owning your power and like being the creator of your reality. And I realized like you can just decide that this is the one. If you're like, this is the lifetime where I break this pattern, boom, you can make that happen as long as you continue to choose that.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I have another question or another thing that you had mentioned. You said that you have some of your past lives, they act as your spirit guides now. Maybe can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, definitely. Well, honestly, it ties back in. The first time this happened, it was Steve the Psychic that introduced me to like my first one. Actually, my very first guide was my guardian angel, and he's been with me my whole life. And I was aware of him, and I kind of just knew he existed from the time I was a child. And I accepted that because it was okay in like the Christian community that I grew up in to believe that that was a real thing. But Steve introduced me, I guess, to my second one that I was conscious of. And it was this past life in Atlantis, and her name is Analia. And so that totally geeked me out when I was like, so you can have a spirit guide that is you essentially, but just like a past version of you. And he's like, yeah, like time doesn't exist. So yeah, like you currently, like the current you is also, your higher self is also like a spirit guide for other people. People right now, maybe in this dimension, this reality, or in other ones and stuff like that. But yeah, so I one of my main guides now that I work with constantly is this Atlantean past life of mine. That's taught me so much about Atlantis and stuff like that. And I found that for me in discovering past lives, like I'm just a nomad. I travel all over the place. Like I'm living in Australia now. I'm from the States originally. I lived in Japan. I'm moving to Europe probably this year. And I find that when I travel to physical locations, it like sparks like a remembering or something. It's initiates like an anchor, as I like to call it. And I will start to be like, oh, I remember this place. I have flashes. And then the guide will come to me like in my mind's eye. I will see this past version of myself. So like I discovered that I had a samurai past life when I was in Japan, like at the samurai museum. And that this he's kind of like a guide, but kind of not, because he's not very high vibe. He's very like angry and misogynistic, but kind of like funny, like in a kind of just grouch way. And this, like, I dealt with a lot of like self-loathing and misogynistic stuff growing up throughout my whole life, and I found out that a lot of that was him. And then here in Australia, like, I discovered an Aboriginal like guide that I have, and he like taught me more like magic stuff and the power of ritual and stuff like that. So it's really geeky, like, and you can just go in and anyone can connect with their past lives. Like, I would recommend, I usually will do it either through like a meditation journey or through like automatic writing, if the audience is familiar with that.
Okay, that's interesting. See, I love past life stuff. I used astrology. We've done Akashic records multiple times, meditation. And one of the things that's interesting is to like go into meditation, I feel, and then like see your past life self and then like look up what you saw and just be mind blown by like, oh, this was what people wore in this time period. Or
yes.
Like,
Yes. And I always like being like a logical person. I always have to do that when I like connect with a past life and I get hits like that. I always then consult Dr. Google and I start researching it. And I'm like, does this even make sense? And it's like, that's how I figured out. I pieced together that one guy that I mentioned in the story, Meredith of Wales, like that she was from Wales and stuff like that. And that her name was actually Meredith. I was like, oh, wow, it lines up.
Wow. Man, it makes me feel like I want to connect to some of my past lives. So I have something interesting with my chart. So I have so apparently in some of my past lives, I was like a man who like abused power. And then I was the victim of that because, you have to learn.
Yeah, so, you got to experience both polarities.
Yep. And so like in this life, I have my Mars in retrograde, and I just don't want to mess with masculine. I'm like, it's like all divine feminine, like not. I mean, I do have masculine, but I just am not down for like the patriarchy and all of that. Like that's like something that I don't know, needs healed or whatever. But it'd be interesting to meet some of those characters. Like, what did I do?
Yeah, I would encourage you to do it. Like, invite them in and just have a conversation, make peace with them, and you might find that it has a ripple effect.
Yeah, the one guy, just like look at him, like, so.
You're like, the reason.
It's you. It's your fault.
Yeah, but that's like a smaller. There's like a lot of stuff with art and like suppression of like you were telling your story, like not speaking your like spiritual like truths. Mm-hmm. There's probably a lot of people who have that, I would imagine.
One thing earlier when you were talking about your story, it's interesting about. I almost felt like it was accelerated. Like you had to go through some of those experiences at a younger age than most people would to accelerate the process of your awakening and to hit these checkpoints. It's so interesting, and it's also interesting to me how we all have similar stories. Yeah. It's just lots of
drama, right?
When you were saying some of the things you were saying, I was like, did that when I was 13. Yep, did that.
Yep.
Yeah, like it's just
you check off the list, right?
Yes, check. Oh, trauma.
Spiritual awakening checklist.
Yeah, I wrote a couple things down. The idea that what is the point? Like, I feel like you were saying the rat race, like to be able to step back and be like, why are we doing this? Like, I don't want to keep doing this. Like, what is this? Like, this isn't right. Like, this doesn't seem like the way we're supposed to be like living. Is very interesting. You realized at a very young age too.
Yeah, that was shocking.
Yeah,
yeah. Very young age.
You can thank Lion King for that.
There's a purpose to it all.
Yeah.
Right? It all connects. It's so geeky.
It's so strange how life works.
Wow. And then the Atlantis thing you brought, we were like literally just talking to somebody else about
Lemuria and Atlantis, and I don't know. We'll get into that.
Like your Divine Derica chat I listened to, and you guys were talking about Lemuria, and that definitely resonates. Like
we were like mind blown that we had like with the crystals and everything, and we were just like, oh my goodness, like did we know
crazy.
each other?
Each one I'm like, okay.
Then you brought it up. We're like, oh god, like here we go.
They said that,
I had a reading that said I was going to start connecting with
more people from the past.
Now I do have a question about when you communicate with your spirit guides. So how do they communicate with you? Like, is it a claircognizance? Do you hear them, or do you get visions? How does that work for you?
I would say, like for anyone listening, it can come through like any way, so don't judge it. And it's really, it's weird that you asked that, because I literally I think I did a video on this like just the other night or something, or some post or something, where clairsentience is actually the most common. And it's like, it's so hard to like recognize though, like feelings and stuff, but your spirit guides will speak to you through just feelings, like it's sensations in your body even. But for me, it's always the two dominants have been claircognizance and clairaudience. So mostly I will just know things, which is why it took me so long to just realize that what was coming through was actually like spirit and not just me. Cause I'm just like, oh, I just know this. Like I'm just a guru, clearly. It's not coming from anywhere else. And then clairaudience, that also, I was having this ever since I was a child, but it took me a while to recognize it, because in my head, a lot of times the voices would just sound like me, and it would be in my head. So I just thought it was my own voice. But what I've since realized is oftentimes your guides can talk to you in your own voice, and they will, because it's easier for your 3D conscious self to integrate and to accept. But what you can tell is like the difference. A lot of people will be like, okay, so how do I tell the difference between me and my guides then? Your guides are always going to have your highest good in mind, and it's always going to feel really uplifting and really expansive when you're connecting with them. Yourself might be coming from a place of ego and might be kind of like crushing and stifling. But so I've developed and I work with like all the clairs. So it's just, I find that certain guides have like preferences for how they like to come through. Like one might prefer visions. They might not ever want to quote unquote talk. And other ones, they're just really chatty and they're just always talking to me. And other ones, I just like kind of know things. We just kind of have this telepathic bond. And some will use all of the above, like just however they see fit.
And you reach out to like, or you've had connections with like deities, dragons, angels, like you felt all of those different energies, right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
What I'll say is, this is what I learned, is that when you channel, like if you can channel anything. Like there's no limit. So once you realize that you can channel, you can tap into literally any source that you want to connect in with, any sort of being. And maybe you'll find that you have a preference eventually as you explore. You got to play the field a little bit and see what resonates. But yeah, you can connect with any source that you desire to. It's just a matter of essentially just dialing the phone number, is what I like to think of it as, with your intention. So like when I do like a channeled deity message, for example, I'm like, okay, like I'll like maybe read up a little bit about that deity beforehand, or like look at an image and focus on that. And then I set my intention. I'm like, I'm connecting in with this deity now. And then boom, I channel them.
Wow.
I don't even know how to... it's so expansive. Like there's so much information that you hold.
Yeah, there's a lot to get out. It was like bubbling up all those years.
Yeah. Even on like just the 3D, but the Australian slave thing. It's so scary.
Yeah, like I've lived a very colorful life at this point.
It's like a movie. It's all like.
I almost feel like the universe places you in some of these places for a reason.
Yeah, for the stories, honestly, because it's like in retrospect, when you're going through it, it sucks. But in retrospect, I'm always like, wow, like that was really cool. It was really dramatic. Like my Leo self loves it. So,
what would be the odds that Kelly Clarkson, that especially that song? Like when you said I was expressing lyrics in my head, I'm like,
yeah, it's so ridiculous. If you listen to that song too, like it kind of is like disassociation, like.
Oh my goodness. Well, music, I always felt like music was important in or in general, like, I don't know, with spirits too, like sometimes we overlook it, you know, like you're listening to a radio and you hear a song, like, oh, this isn't me, and then it's like your guides. Like,
Yep. They get really loud with music if you'll allow them to be. That's honestly one of my favorite ways to receive messages from them is to just put my music on shuffle and be like, I connect in. I'm like, all right, what do you guys want me to know? And they will call you out like instantly. And it's so clear. Like, you don't have to shuffle through, like with number sequences and stuff. You're just like, it's like open to interpretation. But with the song lyrics, you know, it's so clear, right?
Yeah, that's a great way to get messages. I do it all the time.
I have
Yeah.
plans,
Daily.
I have like